Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to give everybody a moment here to get settled onto the Zoom before we kick off. So just hang tight and we'll get started in a minute. All right. Hi, everyone. Looks like we've got a good crowd on. So thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of the Executives Club, welcome to our Manufacturing and Supply Chain Forum event, Midwestern Edge, Chicago as an Anchor for Advanced Manufacturing. We're very excited to bring you this conversation today with the support of our partners at Uptake and Molex. And we're also very excited to announce that we have a brand new co-chair coming on to help us lead the Manufacturing Forum, Chandra Brown, CEO of MXD, and she's our moderator for today's discussion. So thank you, Chandra. We're excited to have you helping lead this forum with Barry from Molex and Brad Keywell from Uptake. And we look forward to working with you. And so without any further ado, we've got a lot to cover today. So I'm first going to hand things over to Barry McGoldrick from Molex for some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Megan. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our virtual manufacturing and supply chain forum event called the Midwestern Edge, Chicago as an Anchor for Advanced Manufacturing. My name is Barry McGoldrick, and I'm the Vice President and Chief Procurement Officer at Molex and the Chair of the Executives Club Manufacturing and Supply Chain Forum, along with Brad Keywell from Uptake. I'm excited to welcome you for a lively discussion focusing on the future of advanced manufacturing and its resilience in an ever-changing world. I'm thrilled to feature Chandra Brown, CEO of MXD, as today's moderator, and welcome Chandra as you begin your new role with us as co-chair of the Manufacturing Forum. She will be leading a conversation with Haven Allen, CEO and co-founder of MHub, Camille Batiste, President of Global Supply Chain at ADM, Phil Griffith, Vice President Supply Chain at United, and Lei Schlitz, Automotive Executive Vice President at Illinois Toolworks. We encourage you all to be active in the chat during today's discussion and to submit your questions for the panelists via the Q&A box below. I want to thank you all again for joining us today, and thank you to our speakers for taking the time out of their day to share their insights with us all. Chandra, over to you.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you to the Executive Club for inviting me to moderate this panel. I'm super excited to join you and Brad as a co-chair of this manufacturing forum. And really what we're going to talk about here is the urgency and the role for manufacturing in our national economic recovery and the pandemic response really have never been more clear. That's why I'm so glad the Executive Club is doing this forum. Hopefully most of you know MXD. We are a nonprofit advanced manufacturing R&D lab right here on Goose Island. And we're really focused on digital transformation and helping our members and the overall manufacturing community to use innovation and technology to become more globally competitive and really to help the country rise to meet these challenges we're facing, from vaccine production to supply chain logistics, workforce skills, cybersecurity. There's so much out there. So no better city, right, to be taking on that work than here in Chicago, my hometown. And we have a great opportunity and a great panel here where we're going to discuss Chicago's role in advanced manufacturing today. So we have 4 brilliant panelists who each have a really unique perspective on the Chicago manufacturing scene. So I know this is going to be dynamic, and we are going to, as we said, have some time for Q&A at the end. And if you have questions in the chat as we go forward, please don't hesitate. So I also promise, because I know many of us go to lots of webinars, that I make them fun, at least at the start. So we are going to do a quick round of introductions. I know we talked about the names, but I really want you to know my 4 panelists. And so forgetting about the pandemic, they're going to introduce themselves, what they do, and my fun fact question are, and it's very funny because I thought of this well before it's recently happened in the news. Where would you go for the ideal spring break getaway? And please be clear, this is after the pandemic. Mexico is an okay answer for those of you. So we're going to do this lightning round, and then we're going to get into some questions that I'm going to ask the whole group, and then a few specifics. So why don't we start out with Haven? Where would you go for spring break, and who are you?
I'll start with the who. My name's Haven. I run an organization called MHub. It's a nonprofit that focuses on reducing barriers of entry for people wanting to build hard tech and manufacturing startups. We're just about 4 years old. We've supported over 350 companies. Those 350 companies have generated over $300 million in revenue. They've been awarded over 400 patents. They've created about 1,500 jobs, and they've attracted over $700 million in investment to the region. We're excited. And next week is actually our 4-year anniversary. So it's been amazing to see it evolve and just see all the talent and the industry come together to launch this new wave of manufacturing companies. And where I would go back to Panama. So this is my 10-year anniversary from when I returned home from the Peace Corps, and still trying to figure out how to get back there during this COVID situation.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Haven. Camille.
Hi, everyone. I'm Camille Batiste. I'm the president of Global Supply Chain for Archer Daniels Midland, based in Chicago. ADM is a $65 billion global agribusiness that's providing a wide range of solutions for human and animal nutrition. In my role, I oversee the global supply chain function, which includes sales and operations planning, delivery optimization, as well as our overall network optimization. And I'm a member of the company's executive council. Prior to this role, I led global procurement for ADM. And before ADM, I spent 20 years at Honeywell International, living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Phoenix, Arizona, both of which I miss right now because I'm freezing. So my ideal spring getaway is Jamaica without question. It's home, it's fun, it's warm. There's really no other answer for that, but I will wait until after the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Camille. Phil.
Hello, everyone. Chandra, Barry, Brad, thanks for having me. My name is Phil Griffith. I'm the Vice President of Supply Chain for United Airlines. In my role, I'm responsible for all of the inventory planning, all of the vendor management, global logistics and warehousing. We manage all of the engine repair and overhaul activity, along with landing gear and component surfaces that support the entire aircraft. It's a dynamic time to be at United because, of course, we're going through a big transition of going from being a very large airline to resizing ourselves, and then, of course, working to build back up. And if I were to go somewhere in the coming weeks for spring break, because we're an airline, it's always tough just to decide where to go and when to go, but maybe Salvador de Bahia in Brazil. It's a great place. The ocean seems to be the biggest ocean that I've ever seen. The Muqueca is great, and they have good golf there as well.
Thank you, Phil. I'm sensing a trend. Okay, Lei, please introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Lei Schlitz. I'm an executive vice president overseeing one of the 7 segments of a hometown company, Illinois Two Works. So I oversee the global automotive OEM segment. And my segment has about 12,000 people all over the world with, over 80 different manufacturing locations, around the globe. And obviously, this pandemic really hit the automotive industry hard as well. So there's a lot to talk about. We have this sort of a V-shaped recovery, but right now it's pending on the supply chain integrity, right? So there's a lot of challenges ahead. And before that, I was running the other segment of ITW of Commercial Food Equipment Group. Also, that's a very global group. And I came from Siemens, which is, obviously a pretty large global automation and energy company. And I worked for GE for quite a few years as well. So I'm also, I know Camille because I sit on the board of ADM, and a couple of years now. Is a great company. And anyways, now talking about the fun, I ride horses. So I'm an amateur show jumper. But the reason why I ride horses is because every year I would take about 10 days to go all over the world, right? Pick a location and do a horseback riding vacation without cell phones or anything, to really see the scene on top of a horse And I booked a trip. I was in South Africa and Botswana in 2019 for 10 days. So I got hooked on it. I booked a trip to Namibia in 2020. Of course, I didn't get to go. So that's where I'm going to go, to gallop on top of the most beautiful animals in the world. And, on the Africa savanna, and wind blowing past my ears, and running alongside of giraffes and wildebeest and ostriches and the like. So that will be my dream. The dream is becoming more and more, more and more important for me.
Oh God, thank you, Lei. Isn't that great? I love all these answers. Okay, but now we're going to take away the international and laser focus on Chicago. I want to dive a little bit deeper into Chicago's local strengths. I hope most of you on the call are familiar with this. We have obviously incredible workforce, some really incredible academic, institutional players, this great tech entrepreneurial community here. That's all part of our success here. So I'm going to ask all of you, all four of you, kind of to answer, what is the hidden gem of the Chicago manufacturing ecosystem that you think is underutilized? And what part of the local environment is most valuable to you and your work? And I think we'll just go in reverse order, and let's start with Lei.
Well, I think hands down is really the talent pool up and down the value chain. So, obviously Chicago, because it's the location and the population, we serve as a center of manufacturing hub for all the neighboring states, right, in the Midwest, with a lot of integrated innovation and manufacturing capabilities kind of throughout the value chain. So we not only really need the STEM talents, the university graduates, engineers and scientists to really drive the innovation, but we really also need the advanced technical talents to enable the automation, the manufacturing, process techniques, tools, and like tools and die makers, maintenance technicians, electricians, service technicians, but also even to the skilled operators running machines, assembly lines, and machinists, welders, and things like that. I can't tell you how difficult it is to really fill these jobs, even in the most difficult and challenging economical situations. So we see that a lot across, because ICW has all 7 very different industry segments. We see that a lot in all the segments every day. And so what we really need to do is to really develop a fully integrated talent pool to support our ambition, right? And the industry's ambition in Chicago to really serve as this hub of regional advanced manufacturing value chain. And we have Chicago and neighborhoods have the institutions like universities, but also technical schools and community colleges. And also we have the population of students, high school students in the city public school systems and things. So I do see that as large companies, we and senior leaders, we have the responsibility to really partner with the universities, but also the local community schools and trade schools and things like that, really to develop this integrated talent pool to really support our ambition, right? So that will be and build this ecosystem in a sustainable manner.
Excellent. Thank you, Lei. That's a great answer. Phil, what do you think some of the hidden gems, local environment?
Well, for sure, I agree with all the points that Lei made in terms of talent and infrastructure, resources that you can call upon. For United, we have many of our major suppliers that are local to Chicago and the Midwest. So that creates a lot of opportunities for us to collaborate well together, for us to think about what future planning looks like and ways of interacting on new technologies and new programs. There's a great deal of distribution and logistics capacity in the region, and that's a big deal for us because we're always trying to predict the almost unpredictable in terms of where we have our next outage or where we have parts or services that are required. So having quick access to those services and to those parts is a big deal. I think the ability to engage with technology is also a relatively strong aspect of being here in the Midwest, and in that there's a lot of advanced thinking and a lot of capability, especially from a consulting standpoint and from a college and university standpoint, and helping us to think through what the next advancements and developments are in ways that we can communicate and take cycle time out of how we plan and get things done.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, supply chain and the suppliers are incredible in the Midwest area. Okay, Camille.
I think my answer is going to be a little similar to Phil's, but maybe with a twist. When I think about ADM's supply chain, it's large, it's complex. Our transportation modes span road, river, sea, air. I don't know that we miss anything. We're transporting materials in different ways.
Camille, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Can you?
I'm gonna get closer. Is that good?
That's better. Thank you.
Perfect. So our transportation modes span road, rail, river, air, sea. And so what we get from Chicago is a central location, and the robust transportation network allows us, based in Chicago, to be able to connect very quickly to our global markets and global customers, and still staying in close contact with US farmers in the Midwest, with our customers locally, and with our operations that are spread across this region as well. So the combination has been very special for us. We just moved our headquarters to Chicago about 7 years ago. So we're pretty new to the city, if you will, and we found that it's really changed and elevated our business and the way that we interact. It's also helped us in terms of attracting talent into our company, whether it's bringing people into Chicago itself or into surrounding areas. They find that not only are they able to find opportunities with ADM, but their family members are also able to find ample career opportunities. And even from a personal perspective, and I was one of those people that relocated to the area, having access to the culture side of Chicago and experiencing what the city has to offer and the diversity of offerings really helps as you're building that value proposition for talent to bring them into your organization. But by far and away, we think about the connections to our customers, the connections to our suppliers, the connections to our producers, our farmers. Chicago is really the only place that we could be.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, we do have an incredible culture here. Haven, last but not least.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say Chicago is the best kept secret on manufacturing in the United States. It's the second largest manufacturing economy in the US. No one would know that, right? We have over 16,000 small manufacturers here throughout the state of Illinois, which means your supply chain and your customers are potentially here. I know mHub, we work with people who want to create new products and build businesses around that. And we just launched an accelerator program. We had 489 applications from all over the world that applied to move to Chicago to build their business. And it's because this is where their supply chain, this is where their customers, this is where the Fortune 500 companies that they could tap into to really scale up their business. And then of course, match that with being able to move their products anywhere and having access to talent at the highest level to just 400,000 plus production workers. This is a place where you can build and thrive in manufacturing business.
Absolutely, thank you, Haven. Kind of took some of the words out of my mouth. At MXD, I would say what we just love is this whole ecosystem. It's like, it does take a village. It takes everything. It takes the logistics. It takes the academic institutions. It takes the diversity and the incredible talent to make it all become real, if you will. And so I'm really excited to hear everyone's perspective on that. My next question, again, we'll ask everybody is, let's talk about, again, we can't talk about advanced manufacturing and manufacturing right now without addressing the time of the pandemic and COVID. So I know people are always interested in what is the role it played in your COVID response plans? And now that we're over a year into it, which I don't think most of us and most of our manufacturing members never thought it was going to last this long, and here we are. So let's talk about, there are the lessons learned and looking back in particular, are there things you would have done differently or things that you would prepare for, kind of the next big thing that will hit? And again, we'll go to reverse order starting with Hayden.
It's interesting. I mean, COVID has definitely impacted our business. We've remained open. I mean, with 270 startups here, we have about 600 engineers in our talent pool, and we went and activated these engineers to redesign and design a lot of costs out of things like ventilators, face masks, face shields, ambu bags, and did so in partnership with big Fortune 500 companies, the Johnson Controls, the Accentures, and Googles. And in a matter of weeks, we were able to spin up 2 technologies. One of them got selected by DARPA and the Air Force to spin up, and basically we're able to take a ventilator and it's $30,000 cost per unit and engineer it down to about $1,000 per unit, and then open source that technology to anybody who needed that technology at that time. So I don't know, it's changed us, but I would say it also brought out the best and brought people together, and all leveraging and solving an immediate need, both locally and throughout the nation.
Thank you, Haven. Yeah, I agree with that. Camille, please.
Sure. So COVID, of course, put tremendous pressure on the global food supply chain, from logistics challenges to supply and demand volatility, and certainly employee concerns as number one, employee safety concerns.
Camille, again, can you
again? Oh my goodness, I'm leaning in. So in order to uphold our role in maintaining the supply chain continuity, we had to pivot very, very quickly and leverage advanced manufacturing capabilities to improve our processes. And so if you think about, within a facility, we try to keep the number of people in a plant as low as possible to maintain social distancing and keep our people safe. And so one of the things that our operations IT team quickly spun up for us was to build in augmented reality. So if there was a problem at the facility, the operator could put on the augmented reality, glasses, and allow an engineer or an expert to see what he is seeing, so that they could help to solve issues without bringing that person on site. So that's really one area, one example where we were quickly able to make that happen, to maintain the social distancing, get the support for the people at the facilities that were working continuously throughout the pandemic and continue to work continuously, to give them the resources and the solutions that they were looking for. And I think what's come out of that is we realize the power of that type of technology. And so now I think if you say, what would we have done differently? Could we have had all of that in place sooner? And it also helps us to think more about how we continue to bring automation into our facilities, both from a food safety perspective, supply chain continuity, safety within our plants, as well as helping to improve productivity and improve the experience of our employees in the facilities.
Thank you, Camille. Absolutely. Digital transformation and investing in these advanced manufacturing technologies really are critical to folks recovering from this pandemic. And that's one of the things we worry a lot about is, where is the investment going, and are people still investing, in the importance of these transforming technologies? So really appreciate that perspective. How about you, Phil? What do you think? What do you get? I know COVID has certainly impacted you.
It has a bit, and what's interesting for me, I've worked in many industries, traditional manufacturing, where you're adding labor, material, overhead, and you're making a product that you have different types of customers that will buy. And oftentimes when volumes are up for one segment of your customer base, it may be down for another. It's rarely up across all segments, but we always look forward to that whenever it does happen. I'd say for us in the airline and airline industry, at United in particular, we've never seen anything like this before. Where literally overnight, 90+% of your volume just went away. And you had to quickly transition into a position where you were fighting for survival. You were fighting to think through how you were going to maintain your business, how you're going to maintain the optimism and perspective of all of the valued employees that you have. How are you going to keep people safe along the way? And most importantly, how are you going to start preparing an approach, a playbook that would allow you to reasonably work your way through, again, the most significant jarring disruption that your business and your industry has ever seen. For us, it really came down to very clear and direct messaging from leadership that talked to how we were going to do it. It talked to the things that were going to be a priority for us in terms of preserving jobs, bouncing back quickly, using data to drive decisions, and of course to take care of each other along the way. So establishing that what we were going to do was very important early on, because a lot of folks didn't really understand the magnitude of the problem, or the degree to which we would have to go to work our way through it. As we started thinking about how, we worked very hard to make sure we were clear on the things we want everyone to be all in on, to include driving liquidity within the company so that we can have enough cash to survive and weather the storm. Things we had to do to reduce our cash burn, or the rate at which we were spending millions and millions of dollars a day, literally to fly planes around that didn't have people on them. And then of course, reimagining and thinking through how our business was going to be different going forward, in terms of how can we take things that looked like, or parts of our business that looked like fixed costs, and variabilize them. To do that, there was a lot of collaboration. There was a lot of, some things happened fast in terms of decisions that we could make quickly. We had to highlight our priorities around how we were going to do that. Essentially, we had to stop spending. We had to make sure we understood where our biggest payback opportunities were. And for many of those things, we could act on it because we had the ability to access information and to collaborate well on those vital few priorities. Some of the things that took a little longer were more contractually related. When you have contracts that lock you in for years at a time on parts and services and even labor contracts, you can't just throw all that up in the air and say, this is how we're going to do things different as you go forward. We have to continue to be a good partner and a good steward of those contracts, and work effectively with folks to come up with ways so that it could be a win-win type of situation. And I'd say that was the area where we put a tremendous amount of work into. It was one of the areas where we felt like we accomplished the most. And I think all of that has helped position us so that we have a very positive outlook coming out of this pandemic.
Thanks so much, Phil. It's nice to hear you can kind of end with some optimism, and that's a huge amount of lessons learned. Like, I think books will be written on this going forward. So really, thank you for that insight. Lei, please.
All right. Well, I think it's, maybe first from an industry point of view, I think pandemic really taught us a lot of lessons on how long and fragile the supply chain is, right? And, I work for the automotive segment. So a lot of times the risk management and contingency planning are really not sufficient. And it's really, demonstrated, right, in time of crisis. The semiconductor chip shortages right now, I think you probably read it all over the news. That's impacting the entire automotive supply industry worldwide is a great example of how fragile the supply chain is. And frankly, how unprepared the whole industry is, right? And because, the industry was a little more obsessed in price than the risk management. So the lessons learned really from that is really, we can't really optimize supply chain mainly based on price for short-term gain, and neglect the risk management, neglect the, how long the supply chain is, and lack of secondary sources, safety stocks, and inventory. But on the other hand, I think the way that ITW is built, because our decentralized, business model, that means we actually maintained a lot of local supply capability, local manufacturing capability, local innovation, sales and marketing capability to handle this. And so in the beginning of the pandemic, we, as an enterprise, we actually made a pretty, I would say, pretty fateful decision that we not only want to keep our employees safe, but we actually support our employees and keep them employed without any one single furlough or layoffs. That was a huge financial drain on us. You know, we're in a really good financial position to be able to afford it. But our goal is really to keep serving our customers in the best capability that we can and fully participating in the recovery when it comes. And that has a huge playout, a huge win at the end, right? I don't think we're at the end yet, but so far is paying off. I mean, use automotive as an example. We, you know, similar to the airline industry in Q2, in Q2, starting in March, all the major automotive OEMs shut down. And so in North America, we actually lost 80% of the revenue, right in that quarter. And but then, unlike the airline industry, actually in Q3 and Q4, all of a sudden the demand started to, you have a sharp V in terms of a demand. And because we were able to keep our labor force, we were able to keep our colleagues, so and keep them safe. So our business leader actually had the time and energy to really focusing on our customers, catering to their local needs and changes and respond to it. And also we had the energy and time to cater to our local supply chain, to keep them paid and to keep the inventory and things like that. So our Q3 automotive, we doubled our revenue in Q2. And in Q4, we actually exceeded our 2019 level, right, in the same period of time, without any additional cost or productivity loss and things like that. So I think that's that's a really lessons learned for us, that in terms of planning forward, we really need to do additional risk managements and things like that, and really keep a lot of the local resources available to us so that we can serve our customers in the best capability that we can.
So let me follow up on that, because ITW is really unique in its kind of decentralized structure, right? What about, how does that lend itself? You talked a lot about the lessons learned kind of from the pandemic. How does it lend itself truly to innovation, or like the experimentation side? Could you just comment briefly on that?
Okay. I think this is interesting, because usually people have this super long supply chains and things like that. It was really for cost reasons, right? And for us, ITW has always believed in this decentralized model. That means we want to stay closer to our customers so that we can precisely know exactly what problems and pain points that they have and the needs that they have, and then respond quickly with our local engineering capabilities to work with our customers in the product design cycle, so that we're involved in the product design with the customers. And then we have the local, obviously manufacturing resources to be able to quickly build prototypes, build, pilots and launching products. And also, as we can, we do local supply chain as well, right? So the entire model is really not really built on cost per se. We actually, our cost is very efficient, but it's not really built on product cost. We are not known as the low product cost players, and we are actually in anything we're very high price players. And but the thing is, our goal is at the end is really trying to reduce throughout the entire life cycle, reduce the total cost of ownership for the customers, right? So nothing is just about product cost. It's really the experience. Is when you have issues in the field, we're able to fix you and fix the problem and get you back on running, right? To save you the downtime and to be able to fix the problems quickly. And so we actually maintain customer for life, right? In the next generation of product life cycle. So actually, I think it's a pretty nice model, because we have a lot of local response. All of our divisions. If you just think about them, Haven, you're talking about small companies, and ITW's model is we're a huge public company. We have the financial power, and the financial support and backing, we can, throw out, huge amount of capex and build facilities and things, but we run like a series of small companies where the business leaders are really truly entrepreneurs, right? They truly make local decisions and on a day-to-day basis without going through a lot of the bureaucratic chains of command, right? So that gave them a lot of, talk about empowerment. That's empowerment. And so that actually served us very well for the last 100 years.
Yeah, thank you, Lei. Yeah, that's a great story. So yeah, you were kind of talking about small businesses, so that makes me think of Haven and the great work that's being done at mHub. And I know Haven, you're very plugged in to the civic life, if you will, of the city. And I know you know the resource as well on kind of the support systems. We've worked together for a while now. How does this ecosystem help advanced manufacturing thrive and flourish here in Chicago in the Midwest? And how did that play into the mission of mHub?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say that the civic community really, at least for the last 7 years as we emerged out of the Great Recession, has really made the manufacturing industry an absolute strategic priority in growing the economy here. Really wanted to leveraging our strategic position, our supply chain, our talent, our universities, but then look at how we could create new competitive advantages. Prepare for the workforce of the future, build applied research capacity by launching things like MXD, helping existing companies get into new markets so that they both domestically and internationally, so that you can expand the revenue base here from our local manufacturers. And then a place like mHub was built really to lower costs and barriers so that those emerging technologists, those emerging ideas had a place where they could access capital intensive resources, connect with industry in order to build and launch new manufacturing products. And it was the leadership from groups like Molex and Chamberlain and Underwriters Laboratory that underwrote this activity, mHub. And we built a 63,000 square foot lab. Today it hosts 270 companies. And our sole goal is to create wealth and jobs by launching new physical product, hard tech manufacturing businesses. And the thesis is starting to work out. And I know the new piece that a lot of people are starting to look at is this access to capital. It's sort of the key missing piece, I would say, in the market right now is having that risk capital available to help seed some of these best ideas, help drive them to their scalability points. And there's some new funds, new activities. We have a strong history of industrial private equity that are now looking at this as well. And this could be one of those catalytic moments if we can solve that piece, because we have all the right elements here and amazing manufacturing associations like the Technology Manufacturing Association and IMA, and just great institutions that can feed this system if we can continue driving forward.
Yeah, excellent. You should be really proud of your anniversary. Happy anniversary. You guys have done incredible things for the Chicago area, so good job. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to get to Camille and Phil. And then after that, hopefully we're going to have a little bit of time for some questions. So if you have questions, don't forget, put them in the Q&A. I know we have one in there already. But I want to get to Camille and Phil and really talk about the supply chain issue now, particularly from these different industries. So compare, contrast. I bet there is a lot of similarities as well, into what you're doing. So let's talk about, the aviation, the food industry. You both talked about how much there was a disruption to the supply chain. But what were you well equipped to handle? And did this mission or your team members, like in the skills you were looking for, did any of that change, throughout the pandemic? So I'd love to hear both of your kind of comments on supply chain and that importance to your industries and the huge, multinational companies you work for. So maybe we'll start with Phil and then Camille can chime in.
Thank you, Chandra. I mean, for any good airline that is going through a challenge and is going to effectively get through it, there's a couple things that'll never change. A commitment to safety, a commitment to great customer service for those customers that you still have. When we talk to our customers today, in terms of how we've worked our way through the pandemic and all the challenges that have come through it, we get very positive statements. Our Net Promoter Scores tell a great story of how we've been able to pivot and put programs in place to make the best of a challenging time. And as we continue to work our way back to a healthy outlook. In terms of supply chain, what's different about supply chain post versus pre-pandemic, we had plans on all kinds of stuff to drive more efficiencies and material availability and expansion potential. Things that we were going to do within our repair and overhaul shops to become more efficient. Everything stopped, everything. There wasn't one aspect of where we were spending money or applying resources to make our supply chain better, including our engagement with suppliers, that continued as before. And that was where the challenges really came. How do you get your arms around your supply chain to know that when you say stop spending, you've really stopped spending? How do you get your arms around your supply chain to know that for the remaining activities that are taking place, that you have insights into what the fleet mix and what the parts requirements might evolve to as you start flying more cargo, as opposed to passengers, business travelers within the US and around the world. So the importance of having or creating or building on our data and our analytics capabilities became everything. And as we did that, we were able to make great decisions. We were able to keep suppliers on board along the way. And we were able to think about what evolving to being the airline that, what evolution meant to us in this new environment, which essentially was about getting information where it needed to be most efficiently, most effectively, so that we can execute.
Yeah, excellent. Huge amount of change. Thank you, Phil. Camille, anything you want to add to that or contrast?
So our leadership team was just incredibly proactive in response to.
Camille, I'm sorry. I hate to do this to you. Scream it.
Better this. So we were incredibly proactive. Our leadership team was in the response and getting ahead of some of the challenges. And I think as a result, in some cases, we were able to sort of miss or skip some of the challenges that other companies might have seen. But we still saw significant changes in demand volatility and movement of demand. And so if you think about, for example, we sell food, so people continued to eat, but our demand shifted from restaurants, for example, to grocery stores. And so we had to make significant changes in our supply chain to be able to address that. But how we did that was, first, we created a task force during the initial stages to address the employee safety. We wanted our employees that are working in locations day in and day out to be safe, so that we set the physical distancing in place, the masking guidelines, the removal of people who don't need to be in the plants. That was done first to make sure that we would continue to be able to support not just our customers, but support Americans and support people around the world in being able to continue to eat. That's important. We need to keep those grocery store shelves stocked. We also had the benefit of learning from our operations in Asia and in Europe, which allowed us to get ahead of that plan. As they were dealing with some of these things, we learned from what they were doing and were able to put some changes in place in the US very quickly. With regard to the scale of disruption, like I said, ADM has a pretty complex and diverse supply chain. So we saw, in the case of demand, we saw some product lines with significant demand increases. Think of industrial alcohol as an example, as people shifted to hand sanitizers. We saw some that had significant drops in demand, and think of sweeteners as people weren't going to concerts, weren't going to restaurants, and weren't going to stadiums. And then we saw some demand of some product lines shift from one segment to the other, as I mentioned earlier. So to address the volatility and the huge unknowns, So number one, we had to take calculated risk on inventory in the early days on key raw materials. So we purchased additional inventory to prepare for the spikes and the unknown disruptions. And so that was a risk on our behalf, but it turned out to be the right decision. So we're very pleased with that. Our global teams worked around the clock to prevent worldwide product shortages by reformulating solutions in some cases with available ingredients or finding secondary ingredient sources. We sought out new sources for unique ingredients. We had a supplier in Wuhan, for example, that couldn't deliver for a long time. We found suppliers in South America who could deliver that product. We also repurposed some of our trucks to transport products that were where demand went up from products where demand went down. And so we were able to make those changes within our supply chain and really make those changes because we had the relationships built across the organization. I'm actually still shocked that we're able to make these quick decisions when we're not in the office together, we're not face to face. You can't just walk to someone's desk. We're working remotely, but we're still able to connect and make these decisions very quickly. So as a result of the pandemic, all 800 of our global facilities have remained in operation, some even at record levels. And I kind of joke that maybe they're record levels because people like me aren't there and trying to tinker with what they're doing. So it worked out as it has been a good story for us as a company, but I think most of all, it's a good story for the food supply chain because that was critical. No matter what was happening, it was important that we were able to feed the world. Our mission to unlock the power of nature and enrich the quality of life remains largely the same, but the importance of the mission has been underscored by COVID as the global food industry had to navigate this unprecedented disruption. But as we move toward a post-pandemic era, which I hope is very soon, our focus on nutrition, health and wellness, and sustainability is taking on an even greater meaning. So changing consumer preferences as a result of the pandemic, that's continuing to drive interest in things like plant-based health and wellness products and creating significant opportunity for us to continue to innovate and pioneer new solutions for consumers.
Thank you, Camille. And I loved hearing about both these industries. At MXD, we get a lot of funds from the U.S. Department of Defense and others. And I would say several of our projects are on supply chain, like risk alerts, predictive, using AI, like all these things that you are saying, even for the small and medium-sized manufacturers that, struggle with these issues. So I really think that was helpful. So I know we only have a few minutes, but I want to get to at least one audience question so I can have our panelists answer it. And I see one here from Cliff. Thank you, Cliff. And I think this is actually a really good question. And I'll read it for my panelists. So any one of you feel free to jump in and answer. Knowing that technology in itself is not a silver bullet, we all know that. I'm curious to know, what gaps do you see when it comes to using IoT to digitally transform your organizations? For example, on the people side or the process side. Again, I think one of the big worries that we have is that people aren't investing as much in terms of transforming the organization because of all the things that have happened. And unfortunately, what we've seen with our members at MXD is the pandemic has caused the need to accelerate and go quickly to be more important. But again, as Haven says, there's an access to capital issue, and how do you make that happen? So love to hear any of your answers to that question.
Within the airline industry, we've got a lot of guidelines, a lot of regulations, and a lot of technical information that we have to adhere to when we do everything from maintain an aircraft to receiving parts that are associated with that, how we audit, and of course deliver materials to support the technicians. Using technology to automate and to digitize a lot of those steps has been a big deal for us. It's made a real difference. So instead of a technician sitting in front of an engine or a fuselage part, identifying the problem and then running back to a library to get hard copies of what he or she is supposed to do next, they're able to use iPads and other types of digital technology to identify the solution, order the parts, have those parts delivered right to them, and execute the task much faster so that your flight can leave on time. I think the challenge here, and I agree with the point that technology is not a silver bullet. The challenge here is, how do you get the right inputs from the user community so that the feature sets, so that the functionality, and so that the challenges of growing into this new technology is a benefit to the employee. If you put something out there that your workforce just can't get up to speed on learning or using, or if it's too cumbersome, that's money wasted, that's time wasted. It generates a lot of frustration. If you have a supply chain where different parts of your supply chain aren't exactly like those of others, you miss out on features that are very, very important in small markets, for example, or in our case, in airports and in hubs where you may have a long transition from a hangar store to where the planes actually reside. So there's always going to be a need to listen, to get feedback from employees in terms of how would they enhance the idea and enhance the usability of this technology, and then of course their engagement on ongoing training and how you further develop. The need to listen to employees is very, very important, and that's something that we're in the process of doing, and we feel good about where we're going.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone else want to chime in there?
So I might, try to address this maybe in three different levels. One is because in our industry, well, we have 7 industries. So depending on what you make, right? Sometimes we make parts, sometimes we make actually equipment that being used by our customers. So in the machines that we build, how the customers are using it is going to be pretty important in terms of determining where IoT is going to be used, right? So in the previous segment that I run in food equipment group, where these are kitchen appliances, commercial kitchen appliances that are used in restaurants, cafeterias, and large stadiums, and institutions, and things like that, or I mean, especially in chain restaurants. So a lot of times, or in supermarkets, people do want to have connected machines, to have all their assets connected together so that they could actually essentially, like Walmart, just think about Walmart in the deli situation, all the scales and food processors that they use in delis. They want to be able to send out the menus, right? Update the menus into, what the price list into the, all the machines in their stores. And they want to be able to control the freshness, monitor the freshness of the food that they sell, and then, put in promotions and or price discounts and things like that. So in those cases, our machines have to be internally connected to be able to communicate with the central location, and to be able to have the sensors and all the necessary gadgets and software related to be able to do that, right? And to anticipate what the customers are needing so that we build those capabilities into our machines. It's a sort of an evolving task that we need to do. Now, the other side is really on when you sell these machines, they don't last forever. So our service technicians have to be able to go fix them. So this goes to Phil's point of, if you have the capability built into your machines that enables and supplements your need to do diagnostics, right? And so this whole augmented realities and sensors collecting the data and be able to do analytics remotely and allow us to fix the machines quickly and maintain the machine quickly, so that the customers can get back online. So that's another aspect of it. And the other thing is, when we're this applies to all of our businesses, we manufacturing stuff, right? So I think it's the combinations of sensors, machine controls, coupled with data analytics while we're on our production floor, and to help our operators to be able to make whatever that we're making. I think that's another area. So really depending on the needs of these different levels, I would say IoT do play a pretty big role, but it is a tool, it's means to an end, right? We need to define the ends and then go figure out the means.
Thank you, Lei. That was such a great point to end on. And I'm sorry we can't get to more questions, but I want for sure to let Brad have a few closing words of wisdom for all of us. So I'm going to hand it over to him. Thank you so much, everyone. I think it was a great discussion.
Thanks, Chandra. It really was interesting, and there's so much to think about, especially as so much change is happening all around us. So I'm Brad Keywell. I'm the founder and CEO of Uptake, and I'm a co-chair of the Executives Club Manufacturing and Supply Chain Forum. As we created this forum, one of the goals was to bring insightful conversations to the broader Chicago community. Today's panel is clearly reflective of that objective, especially as it relates to articulating some of the defining issues that I think are more opportunities than challenges. One of the things that strikes me after listening to today's conversation is that there still is really not a defined national ground zero, if you will, focal point for true application of technology into manufacturing as a vibrant ecosystem. It's happening in pockets all over the place, but I'm not sure there's a Silicon Valley per se for advanced manufacturing put into action. Not proposing that there should be, but there simply isn't. And we, I believe, probably all have a similar interest out of pride for Chicago and an appreciation for the uniqueness of the Midwest, the uniqueness of operating businesses in a variety of industrial spaces, vibrant technology, and capital sources more plentiful now than ever. When that comes together, if done responsibly and with discipline, extraordinary things happen. And it leverages our universities, leverages the think tanks like Argonne and others. There's really a lot of opportunity here if we can be the most collaborative of all communities in this big opportunity that we're talking about today. So with that, I just want to appreciate everybody. Thank you for your participation. There's an International Business Forum on February 23rd that the Executives Club is holding that I was asked to pitch. So there's the pitch for that. Hope everyone has a wonderful day. And thank you once again, all of you, for your participation. And thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.